now with the way technology is, it's so easy to just apply a few things afterwards to make your audio sound great. It's so easy now to take these long form videos. Like if you're shooting a video on your phone on your way to work or doing a podcast, it's so easy to take those and chop them up into clips. An hour podcast, you could, my guess is you're going to get 5 to 15 really good clips. That's the difference. Back in, 5 years ago, that wasn't an option.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Spencer Shaw with us. Spencer has founded and had successful exits in multiple businesses in the software, real estate, and internet industries. He's founder and CEO of the podcast production company Podkick. He's also the host of the Business Growth Podcast and co-host of the Prosperity Podcast. Spencer, it's so great to have you on the show.
It's great to be with you, Stephan.
So we know each other from a mastermind that we're both in, a small one. We actually had an episode air on my other show with a couple of our colleagues from that mastermind, and that was such an amazing episode. We talked about spirituality and personal development and growth and all that sort of stuff. So thank you again for being on that show. That was episode 463. If you're a listener of Get Yourself Optimized, or if you're not, you should be. And if you are, make sure you listen to episode 463, where Spencer and I chatted with Andrew and Angelo. So thanks for being on this show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And, having a conversation with a friend that you already have a relationship with means that we get to go below the surface. So that's what's going to be fun.
Yeah. So let's start with a little bit of backstory. How did you get so into podcasting and into AI?
So the way that I got into podcasting, it was probably 13, 14 years ago. I owned a software company. And one of the things that we did in our software company is we built apps on the Facebook platform. And one of our clients that was using our app, and they happened to use it at a pretty large volume, they said, "Hey, we've heard of this thing called podcasting. Have you guys done any work in that area?" So we made some introductions, figured a few things out, and one thing led to another, and you know how it goes. We spun up another company, and that was the story, the formation of it. And then from there, we've just continued to innovate, and we've really, probably 3-4 years ago, went deep down the AI world, and we were ahead of the ChatGPT big boom, and we've been pushing ever since.
Yep. So we'll talk about that more. So first, I wanted to get a timeline of you started your podcast production company before you started your own podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, it was, when was it? Probably a year or two before. And I remember my very first podcast interview, it was with a guy named Wade Foster. He's the co-founder of a company called Zapier. Mm-hmm. And so we just dived in deep, and back then it was a blue ocean. It was so cool getting to do interviews with people, and podcasting was complicated. And when something's complicated, it means it's a little bit more work, but there tends to be a bigger upside.
Yeah. And how many episodes in are you?
On the Business Growth Podcast, I have no idea, hundreds something. On the Prosperity Podcast that I co-host, we're in it 500 something episodes. And then our company produces podcasts for other brands and other shows that we own. We produce hundreds every single month. And our network does, it depends, but anywhere from 1 million to several million downloads a month. So quite a bit of traction too.
Amazing. And are you allowed to share some of the client names or podcaster names that you work with?
Yeah. So some of the brands that we work with, we've gone down a specialized route. So we do a lot of work with financial companies, with legal companies, medical technology, defense, um, like financial services, coaches, real estate. So the podcast that I co-host is called the Prosperity Podcast. That's in the financial industry. We've done work with Wolters Kluwer, Leonardo DRS. We've done work with just a variety of companies, startups. We don't do anything with sports, comedy, gossip. We just swim in our lane, and that's a cool thing for us.
All right, and you mentioned that you also own some other shows that you personally are not hosting or co-hosting. How did that come about?
What happened is we found some, call it, opportunities in the marketplace. And so instead of us having to be the hosts of it, we found talent to run those shows. And what we've done is we will create the content, or we'll hire people to do the content, and then we own the IP. And then there's other shows. We actually have some shows that are fully synthetic, like completely AI. AI wrote the shows, AI did the voice, and AI text of everything. And we're scaling those as well. To me, that's a pretty cool opportunity. I don't think it'll be around for a while.
Well, I've heard there are a number of channels on YouTube that are faceless YouTube channels, and some of them are pretty obvious. They've got that robotic sounding voice that you hear used on TikTok a lot. And I'm curious, like, how is this? How are you monetizing this? What's the market opportunity here for a completely AI show or completely AI YouTube channel?
So the market on the YouTube side is going to be, what you're going to get from Google and Instagram and other partners. They're going to pay you for that. That's a volume game. You have to be really good at many elements of marketing to be able to nail that. The area where we win is when we can own the customer and own the experience. I should say, own the lead. So ultimately, what we're going for is getting people on an email list. There are affiliate opportunities, and then there's also, monthly recurring opportunities, putting them into some type of education platform, having them use a tool, a software that we own, or something like that.
Are you selling these leads? Are they like real estate leads? You're selling them to real estate agents or to companies that then sell to real estate agents? What's the big monetization opportunity for you?
For us, what we're doing is we're not doing any lead gen for other people. So we're focused on building our own email lists. So that's what we want to do. We want to build our own email lists. And then with those email lists, we've built up those personas for the podcasts. And then we are pulling them into, it could be like a group coaching type of program, or like a private audio coaching. Pull them into products, services, things of that nature. But we're not selling off those leads. That's something we could do, but it's a whole other monster. And we're good at that area, and we have friends that are good in the other area, which we've on the podcast company help set up the lead gen. But as far as like optimizing their funnels and doing those things, we don't deal with their external funnels.
Right. Are you helping your clients and your own portfolio of shows grow their channels, grow their reach, and if so, in what ways?
We are, as an agency, so we're very specialized in boutique. So this is something that we've learned over time, that we're very clear on the areas that we can work, and specific to the podcast company, and we're very clear to areas that we don't want to work. So, for example, we will take the raw recordings, we'll produce a final asset of audio, video, and then we'll have tons of written content that we do, social clips, all kinds of pieces. And then there's a very clear line that we hand off to the client. and they will be responsible for scheduling. They'll be responsible for promoting and doing those pieces. And we do that because if we are going to be posting on their social or going down that rabbit hole, then that means that we would need full control. And that's something that requires one, a very careful dance between the two, so we have a clear line. And then as far as the promotion and helping, what we do is we do a lot of guest management. So we'll grow the shows by having our talent on other podcasts. We'll promote the shows through different ads, through different partnerships. But there's definitely the clear line of like, we're not going to be using their social, promoting their social, working in those areas.
Yeah. But you create reels or shorts for your clients as well as the final audio and full length video of the episode?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We create reels, we create shorts, we create the written content for blog posts, for newsletters, for all the caption text that they would use for social media. So they have a massive library of assets that they can use. And then they can use some, none, all. To us, it doesn't really matter. But at least they have all the assets at their fingertips.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned you find talent and you own the IP. These are for the shows that are part of your portfolio. What are some of the tips and tricks that you found by recruiting and onboarding talent to host a podcast and hopefully lock them in so that they stick around and that you're not replacing them like a revolving door sort of situation, and also that they're not maybe taking your audience with them if they do leave?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's two things that come to mind. One, like when you're looking for a partner in life, so you're looking for a spouse, you don't want to find someone that you say, "Oh, I really like them, but I wish that I could just change this thing about them." Like, you're going to take them and you're going to accept, and you're not going to be wanting to make a huge modification and change them. So what that means is our hosts, they already have to have a skill level, and they already have to have a North Star that's guiding them. They might just not be good at synthesizing the operations of making it happen, or they might not be good at coming up with the appropriate strategy that's going to win. So we can, fill that void. The second, as far as the IP goes, we create a win-win situation. So we're always looking to find out how it's going to win for them and how it's going to win for us. And we want to align incentives. So for us, we're going to own the IP of the show, and we're going to own the customer database. But there may be, for example, a back end. So some of the talent, there's a coaching program. So let's say in situations where we have a digital product or a digital membership of some sort, and then there's a back end, more hands-on type of coaching, we stop there. We don't want to get involved with their service coaching business. They can lay out that model. And so essentially what we're doing is we're providing leads, we're getting traffic, and then they can optimize that back end. We take care of the front. And that's worked for us well enough that it's not putting anyone into a trap, and it's not putting it into a way where someone's going to say, well, I'm so frustrated, I'm going to leave, because it's helping each other out at all times.
Right. So you haven't had anybody leave so far that you've brought on board as a show host?
We've had people leave. It doesn't happen often, but we have. And what it typically does is that they'll want to adjust their model. Most of the time, once they leave, they're having a bigger challenge of getting leads. But there's some people that like to run more boutique type of coaching companies. For us, I'm always optimizing for the most efficient thing out there and what's going to create the least amount of headaches. So a digital side, I can control that. and I can automate that on a coaching, like if it's them getting on Zoom calls and managing that process, that's complicated. It's not a business that I want to be involved with. And so, and typically that upside is greater for them than it would be for us. The margins are higher, the prices are higher, but it just is not a business that we want to toy with. So I'll give up that revenue in order to be in the revenue that is more efficient.
And you have a laptop lifestyle, because I've known you for a while now, for at least a few years, and that whole time you have been just bopping around the world, or most of the time, at least for the last year. Tell us how you make that work.
So to give context, our family just came off of a round the world trip for 1 year, and it was amazing. And I have 3 kids, ages 18, 16, and 12. So not exactly like one guy and a laptop. It was a little bit more complex than that. It comes down to a few things. It's always going to be people, has to be great people that we're working with. That means our team members. And it has to be great systems and processes. They have to be absolutely working so incredibly tight. And it's going to be the business model as well. So if I owned a local business that required me to be here, and I was going to be traveling throughout the world, that would be very hands-on unless I had a great operator. So I'm always, in any business that I do before I start it, I'm always thinking about the operator. So there's a new business that we're looking to spin up. It's a physical business. And before we actually do it, we have already been interviewing operators. Like, we have to have a good operator in order to do it. If not, then there's no way I'll touch it. Doesn't matter.
What were the countries that you visited on this round the world trip?
We visited, Brazil, Argentina. We did Japan, Malaysia, Thailand. I mean, like, we all throughout the world, China, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan. We wanted to taste a bunch of different cultures. We wanted to get to meet a variety of people, provide experiences for the kids. And I think we accomplished what we went after. It was, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd come back and be like, oh, that's great, we did it. And we came back and we're like, okay, where are we going to next? So we'll see.
And how do you manage podcasting while you're traveling? Do you bring all the kind of equipment that you want for kind of top tier podcasting, with maybe a green screen and all the lighting, or you just bring a nice microphone and that's it?
I have a microphone and my laptop. So this is the microphone right here, and that's all I use. For the podcasting when I'm home in the office, I've got a full-on studio. I've got the amazing, you're using a Shure SM7B, I can see. So I've got several Shure SM7Bs and mixers and all kinds of stuff. And it just collects dust. And then I have my son is a drone pilot and a filmmaker. And so we have a lot of gear with that. So I think we've got a Sony A7, I don't know what it is, A7 IV or 5 or something like that. A really nice fancy camera with some lenses and lav mics and all kinds of stuff. But it can be simple. And with the way that technology is now, I mean, you could record a podcast in your car and have it sound as good as being in the studio now. The technology has completely changed. It's not like what it was 5 years ago.
Speaking of 5 years ago, I remember a show from back then that was actually recorded in a car, and it totally sounded like it. I don't know if you ever listened to Russell Brunson's show, Marketing in Your Car. You'd hear the turn signal going, and it was just like, really homemade sounding, but it was really quality content. He's a brilliant guy, so it was worth the irritation of listening to road noise while you're trying to hear him drop wisdom bombs.
Yeah, it's tough. I think now with the way technology is, it's so easy to just apply a few things afterwards to make your audio sound great. It's so easy now to take these long form videos. Like if you're shooting a video on your phone on your way to work or doing a podcast, it's so easy to take those and chop them up into clips. And an hour podcast, you could, my guess is you're going to get 5 to 15 really good clips. And so that's the difference. Back in 5 years ago, that wasn't an option. Now it is. And so that's the minimum baseline of things that should happen.
What makes for a good clip? Like the length and the storytelling, and walk us through that.
So first, the mechanics. One, it's going to be vertical. So when you're recording something on your phone, think about if you're recording long form. So let's say it's going to be like a long form YouTube video. You can use a GoPro. You can use your cell phone. You can use a more complicated setup with an awesome camera and a microphone. If it's shooting clips themselves, record it vertical. So either way, for your clips, they need to be vertical. You're going to go less than 60 seconds in most cases. That way it's going to be something that's on YouTube, because YouTube's got that hard limit. Instagram, you can have longer videos. TikTok, you can have longer videos. So then the other elements of really good clips is you want something not necessarily clickbait and not necessarily something that's polarizing, but it's got to be interesting. And so by having something that's interesting, that's going to draw in your listeners or viewers. I'll kind of stamp a couple of things because I think many marketers get it wrong. And where we have seen really good success is making sure that the marketing message and the audience match up really well. And what happens is oftentimes you'll see marketers trying to overproduce something and have it look like a Mr. Beast clip where it's got a ton of movement and it's shocking and it's just over the top. And if you've got an audience of plumbers, this is an example, the plumber, if it's an audience in plumbers and you're helping them optimize their business, having a still camera like in the office or when you're walking around that's not a ton of movement and you're sharing something of value is going to be better than something flashy with a ton of other graphics. And so knowing that audience is incredibly important. And the other reason, and this is, I don't know, not say our secret sauce, but the other reason why we don't go and mess around in the comedy or entertainment spaces is because we simply cannot out-create the most creative people. They're amazingly creative. And it changes so fast. I mean, that world, like if you've seen, people that are in the filmmaking space and you watch their YouTube shorts, I mean, they might put 10 hours into a 45-second clip and they might get some hits on it. But then what's next? Like they have to have another one tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Whereas if, again, you're in a more boring industry, but you understand what's valuable and you speak from the area where you are to solving their problem, as long as the audio is good, it's not distracting, it can be boring and simple. And that's something that will sit and live for months, maybe weeks. We'll call it weeks or months, maybe years. 5 years ago, there was a longer shelf life. Now the shelf life has dramatically decreased, and that's okay.
And the shelf life is a lot longer on YouTube than it is on Instagram.
It is. And I think there's one other area where people will make mistakes is that they will have something that hits, like something that's a winner, and they don't want to take that, like once you've created something that was good, it was a winner. Oftentimes they're like, well, this is on the Hall of Fame and it sits on the wall. No, like bring it down, let it play again. That's okay. Or maybe there's another sequence of videos around that come up. And so it's working from that area. And it's not as hard as people think it is. I mean, you just have to connect. It's knowing the audience. It all comes down to knowing that audience. You know that audience so well, and you can describe the problem that they have. And too often, new marketers, they don't know the audience, or they're trying to solve too big of a problem. And it's like being out in the woods with a flashlight. Like you're not going to see the end of the forest. You're going to see a couple steps ahead. And if your messages are a couple steps ahead, then they're going to say, wow, this helped me today. Okay, this helped me tomorrow. And that resonates with them. But if you're shining a spotlight and it's too far ahead, they're overwhelmed. If you're not shining the light on the right spot, you didn't connect with the audience, they're going to leave.
What are some of the unique challenges of a completely AI show in terms of shining that light in the right areas and being immediately valuable and useful for the listener?
It's the getting the personality, like the person themselves, to be able to connect with the audience. So what that means is it's the flaws in a human are actually the things that make it beautiful. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it's you that told me, but there's like an Eastern philosophy of when they will build things, or they'll do a painting and then they'll come in and they'll add in a smudge, or they'll make a small mistake in it. And that is those smudges, those mistakes in the person are what make it unique and make humans want to come back for more, because they're like, oh, he has a lisp, or he looks weird, or he always goes off on this kind of thing, or something, that kind of piece humanizes it. With AI, it's really hard to humanize. So we can do extremely well at knowing the audience. We can do extremely well at speaking the problem, solving the problem, talking stories, doing things better than the audience, than most humans can do. We can do that. But humanizing is incredibly difficult to do. And the other limiting factor is you can't do interviews when it's another AI, an AI with another human being. You can, but it's not something that has depth. It's more of like a really good robotic conversation.
Do you have interview shows where one AI is interviewing another AI?
I haven't done that yet, but it'd be pretty awesome. And there's some AI tips that I would be happy to share. Like there's some cool stuff that I've been doing this for years. So like to kind of go back, we built our own language learning models like several years ago. And I went down this rabbit hole because I knew where it was. And it wasn't like we were trying to build some gigantic startup and revolutionize the world. I was just like curious. Like I knew we were solving cool problems, and I just wanted to continue to solve really cool problems.
Yeah, let's go into some of the details of how you build the prompts and which AI tools you're using and so forth. And just to give some context to our listener or viewer, you're using one set of LLMs to create the textual content. You're using perhaps another AI to create the audio, maybe even in your voice or another person. Like you're actually modeling real humans, I'm guessing, and not just using an off-the-shelf AI voice. And that would be maybe with 11 Labs, perhaps. And then the last piece is to then create a faceless YouTube video, which you might use, let's say, invideo.io for. Is that a correct kind of summary of the process?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I'll list out some of the tools that we use, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Kind of make that like the resource bank, and then I'll walk through the framework of how we think through it and then how we produce it. And that way, anyone listening or watching can use it. Like I feel like years ago, marketers would come on and dangle something where they'd be like, and here's this amazing thing, but they wouldn't like share the entire like formula. And so they'd leave you wanting more. And what I want to do is I want to share the formula, the framework, and everything, because what happens is when you start somewhere, and any of us can start, but we're all going to lead up somewhere else at a different destination because your curiosity takes you there. And that's where the cool magic is. So as far as voice goes, 11labs.io, 11 Labs is the very best. They do voice cloning. Descript has it. Amazon has it. Google's coming out with it. Nothing's as good as 11 Labs. So that's the best. The next is for video. You can do your video cloning. You can use a variety of tools. One of the best that I've found that is on the marketplace is called HeyGen, HeyGen, heygen.com. They're good. It's not that much money. I think it's maybe 20, 30, 40 bucks a month. You can create your own. If you create your own, they're actually better, but it's complicated. So first go around, don't create any of your own. Just use off the shelf stuff.
Yeah, and when you say use a tool like HeyGen to create a persona, you're talking about an AI facsimile of a person talking and synced up with the audio that you created with 11 Labs.
100% yes. And you can do one of two things. So you can clone yourself, or you can clone someone on your team, or you can also create a clone, like a fake person. We'll call it synthetic. I don't like using the word fake, but we'll use the word synthetic. Understand that first off, you've got a good audience. Don't do anything that's malicious. Like, just don't. Be good with this, with anything that you're doing. So to create a person, there are a couple of tools you can use. The easiest ones to use is going to be by OpenAI. It's in the ChatGPT platform. It's called Dall-E, Dalle. It's the easiest one to use. The second easiest one to use.
And Dall-E is also part of OpenAI's ChatGPT, that if you're paying for ChatGPT every month, you can just start querying ChatGPT, write prompts like create an image for me, and it will use Dall-E to create that image.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. The quality of the Dall-E images they're really good for creating a person or other things. It's good. There's other ones that are better. There's one that's called Mid-Journey. So Mid-Journey is better than Dall-E on the artistic side of things. This is much better. Again, learning curve to everything that you do. That's why you just have to get in and play. Then there are other things that are more complex. Let's just stop there so that people can like dive in and do it. Now, to take any of your long form content. So if you did a podcast interview, or if you got in front of the camera and you had a 10-minute video and you're like, oh, I want to chop these up into shorts, there are a lot of tools that you can use. One of the tools is called opus.pro, and another one is called video.ai, vidyo.ai. Those are both easy to use. You can use other tools like CapCut and a million others, but again, keep it simple and just play around. So that's kind of like the tool stack.
Yep. Well, what about creating a transcript of an episode that you didn't use AI to create the conversation with a guest, but you want to create let's say an intro for that episode written by AI. You want to create a summary of the episode, maybe an entire show notes page. There's a tool stack for that as well, like Cast Magic as an example.
Yeah, you can use Cast Magic. We own a couple different software companies that do that. So our companies, we created these. Um, the simplest, easiest way to do it, instead of me promoting our stuff, because Cast Magic's great, others are great. Take the audio file, upload it to ChatGPT, and say, transcribe this for me. Just simple. And then you say, okay, and then you say, using the same using the same tone, style, and structure, can you write a 100 word intro for me? And it will do that. So now you have something, and then it may be good, may not. You can work and refine from there. For getting transcripts, you could use Otter, which is a good transcription tool. But I mean, just to keep it simple, I'd continue to play on the OpenAI platform, the ChatGPT stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can also take any video that has been uploaded to YouTube automatically has a transcript, so you can view the transcript file. It has timestamps, so you want to remove those timestamps, and you don't have to do it yourself. You can just copy and paste that whole piece into ChatGPT or Claude and just say remove the timestamps and make it look like a natural language kind of flow with paragraphs and all that, and then it'll clean up the transcript for you.
100%. It's amazing what it can do. It's so incredibly useful. As far as, maybe we can get into creating the content or how we bake out those things, but you choose how we want to go down that conversation. Then I'll share frameworks and whatever else.
Okay, let's start with, how do you determine topics?
So one of the ways that I personally like to use chat, and it's different than most people, is I love the audio feature. So I'll have hour-long conversations with chat. Now, there are a couple of things that I will set up guardrails, because chat can get off and out of control pretty fast. And this is with the Chat GPT, the OpenAI app, the official app. So what that looks like is you need to tell Chat GPT, you need to say, okay, I want you to ask me questions. So it's acting as an interviewer. I want you to ask questions, and I want you to extract from me, and you're going to give it context, and you say, because we're going to land on a conclusion. And I don't have the answer right now. So you're going to ask me questions. But you can only ask me one question at a time, and you can not make comments. You just have to ask questions. So now you're getting into this, like, almost like they're a private investigator, and they're asking you, they're pulling, they're extracting, and you're going through. And that's where some beauty happens. So I love to start in that area. When I'm working on topics, I always start with explaining who the audience is. And if I don't know the audience, again, then I go back and say, all right, we're going to go into a new industry. I need to understand the audience. You need to ask me questions so that I can have some empathy and understand this audience. And it will do that. And then I'll ask it to teach me further. So as far as topics go, we understand the audience, we understand the outcome, and I'm going to come and I'm going to say, okay, do you understand? And it could be an industry leader, the problem, the solution that we're looking for. And then we work on getting to the topic and pieces. There's some SEO that can be done in there. But most of the area that we're in on that first swipe, that's all behavioral. Like, we're looking audience, personality, behavior. Then we can dive deeper in using the expertise of the correct keywords and the syntaxes and all the other. But we have to start at the foundation first.
And so when you have the topic and you've identified the ideal client persona that you're trying to reach, and you've gotten the theme of the show and all that dialed in, what do you do then to flesh out the topic into a full-blown video and audio and transcript and all that? Like, what are some of the prompts that you're using to take the next step?
Okay, so what we'll do is, and I'll just use an example, if we're going into a new industry, let's say we were going to go into yoga for guys in their 50s that are looking to add back flexibility and get peaceful and mindfulness, something like that. So we would start explaining who the audience is. We're going to go through and we're going to come up with topics, and the topics are going to help us understand where they start and where they end up. So if it's a podcast, it has to start stronger on the relationship, the bond, the foundation, and keeping it simple. And then it progressively moves on. So we're adding in blocks as we go there. And blocks, I mean, like, think of it like Lego pieces. Those are the blocks that I'm talking about. And what we'll do is we understand, as far as audience depends on the demographics, but if they're short episodes, and short means less than 10 minutes, we want to make sure that they're punchy, they're relatable, they're helpful. So we will ask chat to write the transcript, write the actual script for the episode. So this is where the tooling kind of comes into play. So sometimes if you're very good and you've been able to work through the prompts and the psychology of it, you might get a good result with chat. You may have to go over and use a tool like Claude, as you mentioned earlier. Claude is pretty amazing with a lot of their writing and longer form content. So there's no one tool that like solves everything. And so we'll create the content. Let's say it's a 5-minute script. We'll create that. We'll go through it. We may even say, okay, this is good. Now I want you to look at it through the lens of whomever, the listener, or the lens of us, or hey, where are the parts of this story where we can make it more relatable? And then we may go through and say, okay, what is the purpose of this? What's the like the hook? What's the big like takeaway that's going to come from here? And then we may rewrite again. We may say, okay, well, we need to emphasize that takeaway. So it's working through that over and over and over. Once we have something that we love, that's where it comes in as far as creating the synthetic voice and the synthetic person for that audience. So again, go back to yoga for 50-year-old guys, mindfulness. We're going to decide, and we actually may test 2 platforms. We may test, okay, we're doing a man's voice that is calming and that's going to lead and help that person. We may use a female voice. And we're going to test from there. We're going to see which one actually sticks better. Sometimes we won't test as far as like, we'll just say, no, this is the voice that we like. This is the thing that we like. And we just go from there. But, running tests, as you know, can surprise you. And many times we'll have something that totally shocks us. You have to add in flaws if you can. So different breaths, like pauses, sound, like that. And we do have to fancy up some of the content that we do. So we did a project several months ago that was for a company called Outpost X. So it's an Airbnb hotel resort where it's something out of this world. So what they do is, my friend Travis started this company. They create an experience for their guests. They come out to the Utah desert. They stay in these things that, like the building that looks like something from Star Wars. They have like a hover car. They take showers like outside underneath a fountain. It's unreal. It's like, again, like living in an episode of Star Wars. So we created podcast episodes to, one, prepare the listener as they're coming to the resort. So it's like a half an hour long that they're listening to in the car as they go to the resort. So it pulls them into the story. And when they're on property, there's podcast episodes that walk them through the different tools and experiences. That was outside of Travis's voice, because he had his voice on a few things. Every other voice there was 100% synthetic. The script that we used, some of it Travis had come up with, some of it we changed and manipulated synthetic. And it is an experience that is out of this world. And then when you have added in the element of synthetic on anything you're doing, you may have to add in another element, which is polishing it, making it better. So we have sound effects and sound design and all kinds of stuff. So you can go simple, you can go complex. It just depends on your project.
I'd be curious to see an example of either Outpost X or another client, or even an internal, portfolio example from your own projects where you've created the completely AI-based sample or a segment, and maybe show that in the show notes for this episode if you're game.
Yeah, absolutely. The Outpost X is on Spotify, Apple, everywhere else. Synthetic, and anyone can listen to it right now. And you'll be able to hear those voices, and maybe even on the trailer. I don't think Travis's voice is used at all. Those are 100% synthetic, all of it. That's what's so cool.
All right, awesome. Well, we'll include that in the show notes. So I'm curious to hear. I know from some backstory of us, talking in other conversations, that you teach your kids how to use AI as well. And I'd love to hear, or I'd love for you to recap some of those examples that you've shared in the past with our listener now, use cases of AI with your kids and how they query ChatGPT through voice on the OpenAI app. Like, what are some examples?
Okay, awesome question. So I'll give an example that we used on travel recently, and then I'll give a couple others. So for travel, what we did is, we were in Japan looking at some temples, and the buildings were amazing. Some of the text was in Japanese, some of it was in English. With teenage and younger kids, it depends on how excited they are. They may read the text. They may just be like, can we keep going? Depends on the activity and event. So pull out the phone, and we had chat be our travel guide. So we said, okay, our family, and here's where it's important. This is important for all users. And I think this one step that I'm going to explain right now is where I think the majority of people mistake things. You have to give chat context. So we say, our family is in Japan right now. Our children are ages, 18, 16, and 12. And what we're doing is we're at this temple. We want you to act as our tour guide. Share with us information and walk us through. That's going to be engaging for both the adults, teenagers, and a little kid. And we can even figure out some games, and you can ask us questions afterwards. So now we hold a phone, and chat walks us through, and chat goes, hey, if you notice on these floors right here, they didn't sink the nails all the way. And so when you walk on the floor, it squeaks. And they did that so that the warriors were woken up and alerted when an intruder would come in the building. And our kids were like, wow, this is the coolest thing. That's what we did. We also go through, and my middle son used chat to create a persona, and he wrote a book. It's called The Adventures of Lucas Stone. His book's on Amazon. And so he did that. He used chat as his companion. He used Dall-E and Midjourney. Maybe it was just Dall-E to create the image for the book. And here's the next piece that's really cool. When it came time for editor, I said, okay, well, you got to find an editor. I said, you can go on Fiverr. So he goes on Fiverr, and he goes, Dad, it's going to be $150 for a person to edit my book. I said, yeah. I said, what other options? And he goes, well, I guess I could get chat to do it. I said, okay. So I worked with him, and I said, well, how about this? Let's go to Fiverr. We found the very best guy. He had the best description of what he would perform as his service on Fiverr. So we copied what his deliverables were in his description, put it into chat, and said, I want you to act as the editor for my book doing these things. So the guy gave us the prompt. We uploaded the book. He uploaded the book chapter by chapter. Chat found the mistakes, rewrote the pieces, put in the correct punctuation, even made some suggestions like, hey, you could modify this part of the story. He saved $150. He had a better experience. It's that kind of thinking. So I think on the prompting, it's too often that people are stuck in the world of, hey, make me 10 social media captions that I can use this week. Give me 5 blog post ideas. That's too simple. Get out of that. Get into having a relationship and then realize where the limitations are. So for a while, people thought that AI could do everything. And AI can do a lot. But in regards to you, you're an SEO master. So chat might get, I don't know, 70, 80, 90% right, but it's not going to get the human thinking strategy right, or it's not going to get the cutting edge innovative things. And so understand that there are baselines of awesomeness that it can do, and there are limits. And when you hand things over, so could my son have still gone to the editor, paid $150 and had a better version? Possibly. If it was, a book that's getting published around the world, we could go there. But for this project, no. And same thing, I think, with many of your listeners. If they're trying to get something off the ground, they're going to get baseline SEO or marketing stuff. But if they want real expertise, you have to work with the experts to get there.
Awesome. Well, I know we're at time here. So if our listener wants to apply something from this whole conversation, maybe a little bit overwhelmed with all the possibilities and opportunity here, what would be a next step for them that would be a really easy kind of no-brainer for them?
Pull out the ChatGPT app, push on the headphone, which is the audio, and have a conversation with it. And have chat become your coach and tell it the problem. Be like, hey, I'm a new business owner. I'm an experienced business owner. I'm an advanced business owner, and I'm trying to solve this problem. I need you to help me through it. And we're going to get there by conversation. You can ask me questions, but only ask me one question at a time. And you can make comments, but only make comments in a succinct way so that I can internalize it. And go on a walk or go in a room and carve out a half an hour of time. And after about 5-10 minutes, it's like you forget that you're having a conversation with AI and you're having a conversation with a coach. But it takes time. And it can't be done through the typing. You have to have the conversation because it uses a different part of your brain. I suggest going on a walk while you do it because the kinesthetic piece, it unlocks another part of your brain. And the beauty is when you're done, it's all sitting inside of ChatGPT. You can review it. You can have it summarize it. You can have it teach you lessons. But just go and do, and it will blow your mind.
That's awesome. I love that. That's very practical, not onerous at all. It's an easy next step. Thank you so much, Spencer. And if our listener or viewer wants to work with you and your team, your podcast production company, Podkick, where should we send them to? And if they want to learn more from you, maybe listen to your podcast, for example, where should we send them for that?
For the podcast company, they can go to podkick.com. We've got chat agents on there, really cool people that work there, amazing people. And we have I'm humble to say this, I'm proud to say this, we have the very best strategy sessions in the world. Kayvon leads our strategy sessions. He was the mentee of Michael Gerber from the E-Myth. So he knows his stuff. And as far as my podcast, it's Business Growth. You can search that on any platform, and it's a fun thing to do. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Spencer. And thank you, listener. Hope you make it a great week and reveal some light in everything that you do. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.